Greetings and salutations. I woke up this morning to see that there were some patch notes for the Test Live server, and I always this this is what kind of gets me excited, right? The So I had done a video a couple weeks ago, one of my wish list series videos where um I'll visit places on the map and be like, they need to rework this. This needs to be updated, so forth and so on, and I'll talk into it based off of my playtime and experience. And um, I think I'm gonna dive into the test live server on this because I've come to realize that the critical influence that you and the feedback that you give in the test live phase is the most important. So if you come across a tweak or something that needs to be altered, it's possible to get it changed during the test phase, but I think once it goes into actual production, it's nearly impossible to get it changed. So I'm definitely going to put my influence and input into this test live phase because I normally haven't in the past. So it looks like they're adding a new dungeon, and normally my personal feelings about a dungeons is I kind of feel like they're one hit wonders. But now that they've integrated the fragments of power into the loot table of this dungeon, it's no longer one hit wonders. I think with the rebalancing and the replayability kind of structure that they've set up with the fragment of powers. For those of you who don't know what fragments of powers are, they did a unnamed city rework, and in the unnamed city, the bosses drop. There's 8 bosses, maybe it's 7, that drop fragments of power, and in return, you turn those fragments of power in, and there are currently 27 recipes that you can get from the wall there next to the map room. Inside there in the unnamed city, there's a map room where you can learn cartography. He's a cartographer, and but right next to that, on his right side, there's a little bunch of little scrolls that give you recipes, and like you have the venomous weapons. You have some masks, some furniture. You have the furnace with the new kiln, which is really nice. And so this dungeon ties into that current fragment of power system, which is really good, really, really, really good. Um, so I'm just kind of looking through the patch notes, and so new dungeon, the War Maker's Sanctuary, which is interesting. Continuation on population revamp. I'm kind of curious what this is. Like I'm reading through it. It says includes new bosses, factional recipes. Okay, but this is so vague. It's not very clear. So this could have a significant amount of depth. We don't really know yet. And then temperature system update. See, and this is the stuff that I really like to see is the updates and rework. So just a summary. Here's the kind of itemized and bulletized the summary. So new dungeon, Warmaker Sanctuary, population revamp, additional faction uh, capabilities, and caves. Okay, I'm kind of curious what this is. New loot, like so vague. It could it could be one item or it could be 200 items, right? Super vague. Temperature system update. So in my for those of you who watch my content, um, I'm a big advocate of uh, the continuation of polishing existing systems. Like after you put 100 hours or 200 hours, you're like, you know what, this could be dialed in a little bit better. This isn't 100% accurate, or this, this graphic or this 3D mesh is kind of rushed. They need to go back and revisit this, and I probably have 100 videos where I point out the continuation of just continuing to polish stuff to make it better over time. And you don't really have to recreate stuff. It's more of a, well, let's look at the numbers. And so when we scroll down here and we look at this temperature system update, this is exactly what I desire most in the game for the continuation of development. Um, Attribute changes to agility and survival, which badly needed to be done. Now I'm kind of curious, um, because I've for years I've been kind of on the fence, like almost encumbrance and strength need to be merged, and I realize why they do it, but encumbrance, if you think about it, your encumbrance is your strength, but they have a different set of attributes. Perks in general need to be entirely reworked. Some of the perks are, you can tell they were rushed in the early development process, and then as has gone on and stats have gone on, the multipliers don't really factor out and add up, and that's a little bit of what this is. They've realized that agility and survival play no role in the game, and no one uses it. So in essence, they had prior to this dead stats, but now with this there might be incentive to change, respec your ability points to get some of these agility and survival. So I'm really curious what this is. I'm sure I'm going to do a bunch of videos getting into the mechanics of how this works. Weapon balance changes. I hope they fix the tooltips. I've been ranting around about The tooltips is in the gaming. There's a couple terminology in the gaming development industry where tooltips are usually when you mouse over something and a box pops up and it gives all the informational stats about the item, or if you click on an item and then a card populates somewhere on the side of the screen. So in Conan, it populates in the bottom left corner, and the tooltips or the info card is it's not consistent across all the items. So you could have 10 two-handed weapons, and when you look at all those 10 two-handed weapons, the attributes and how the information is displayed and the characteristics of those weapons is not streamless across all the weapons. Like you'll see cripple twice, and you'll see, some won't say anything, but they still put a cripple on the enemy. And there's just a variety of polishing that needs to take place. So I'm kind of hoping that this balancing uh, is incorporates some of that. Epic armor no longer requires basic armor. See, this is huge. This is huge, and I don't think they've gotten into it, but I would also like them to when you craft the advanced armor's bench, you shouldn't have to have the basic armor's bench. So I'm hoping that this is actually a two part. Like we probably won't see it in this patch, but maybe in the next patch or the next content, I'm hoping that um, this eliminates the need to have the two armors benches, because there shouldn't. If you have I know I'm repeating myself, but if you have the improved armor bench, why do you need the basic armor bench? Like all that stuff should be incorporated into the improved armor bench, along with the improved crafting speeds and additional unlocked items and so forth. What is this? A fix for foundation stacking issue. I was thinking about this. I traditionally don't have issues with foundation stacking, so there might be a specific issue, or maybe it's a console issue, or I just don't never really have any issues with this. So I'm curious to I'm really curious about how this is implemented, and a ton of bug fix and quality of life improvements, god protection, flying thralls, and more. Flying thralls. I haven't seen this. And for me, this is more back to my original statement about what I desire most in life in Conan. That's a joke. Is quality and life improvements and continuing of polishing. So let's look down here. Patch notes to fix a number of under meshing locations. They've been working on this for over a year, and I honestly thought that they had fixed this. I thought this was addressed. So I guess people are continuing to find And I also believe that this issue right here is what affects the server performance the most, because an issue that I come across is I've been playing on multiple different servers because I've been doing so much traveling the last year. Like right now, I'm currently back in Asia, and you'll notice it because my logo is the old logo. So now I'm back in Asia, and if you play on a player versus environment server, it runs seamless. It just runs so good, and it can have worse ping. And then you play on a player versus player server, and it's a mess. It is so chalky and blocky and rubber bandy, and I believe is because people try to do these type of behavior which affects server performance because it like corrupts script, and whenever you're processing that corrupted script, it it loads down the system performance. Um yeah, I just noticed that the playability and the experience is much better for performance on a player versus environment game, and I believe this is why. And I'm not 100% sure. I don't have any statistics or facts, but I do believe that this is part of the big issue. So we're going to scroll down here. New additions. They talked about the dungeon. I've watched some of the other YouTubers go through the dungeon. Um, Firespark talked about how some of the dungeons are a little sterile, and I think this is a better attempt with the traps. And I think they need to come up with some animations like swinging lights, and to get that player experience a little bit more interactive, or the immersion. That's what I'm looking for, to improve the immersion, because they do look a little sterile, and spike traps and explosive traps do increase the immersion. But when you if you have a lantern and you can shoot that lantern and it falls off the pedestal or the shelf and falls on the ground, there's kind of another, and all that stuff exists in the game. So when they do these level designs, a little bit of more immersion needs to be in the back of their head. But we'll see how it fleshes out. I'm still on the fence about adding dungeons, but I think this one I might be the most excited. I wasn't the Sunken City. I spent a whole bunch of time down there just exploring. It's okay. It's okay. I give it a C plus. But this one could be with the armor sets, and we'll talk into that a little bit more when I get down to the bottom. So new dungeon, population revamp. Okay, and then it talks about the faction. And this is the same statement as, so new loot and more. So it looks like um you'll be able to obtain faction recipes and new loot and armor from factions. So so this might be the wrong terminology to call this population revamp. It could be, faction faction revamp, I think, would be the better terminology for this. The following locations have been adjusted. The Mounds of the Dead. Okay, this could be big. Okay, Brunson Bay. I'm sorry if I murder some of these. The King's Niche. So all of these places, I spent a bunch of time at the Mounds of the Dead. Okay, the Black Galleon, the Den. Oh, you know what? I bet you that they've added fragments of power. Following locations have been adjusted. But see, they don't really say how they've been adjusted. The Mounds of the Dead, the Binyak Seal, the Bruiser's Bay, uh, ex- Humans Grotto. So this place right here, this grotto, this thing has just been basically empty and sterile, um, for the entire time. So I'm gonna have to go hunt this out and try to figure out what they've done. Um, but yeah, they don't really get into what they've done. So this paragraph here is kind of a little vague. Have been adjusted. Okay. Um, which I'm okay with vagueness, because then you got to go explore it. Mm, building and placements fixed. Fixed issues with foundations. Fixed issues with walls that could not attach. Okay, to the edge, slope, or roof. I didn't realize that was an issue either. Okay, crafting fixes. Okay. Oh, learning obsidian tools and weapons feats now require star metal to be learned first. So what they've done is they've made star metal the equivalent of iron and steel. They've and so everything is locked behind. I would actually like to see them fragment some of this up instead of making star metal the level requirement. Put some of these other like serpent weapons to be locked behind iron, whatever it requires to craft is whatever it's behind. But I don't know if I agree with this because obsidian is its own tool set, and you're not required to use star metal to craft it. You're required to use steel to craft it. So I disagree with this. It should be locked behind steel. I get what they did. They wanted a level requirement, but I disagree with the star metal. It should be locked behind steel. Okay, here we go. We were talking about Serpent Man throwing axes now also unlocked through Serpent Man feats. Okay, Wall of Silos. Okay, so they've added throwing axes, is what they've done. I never really mess with Superman stuff. I know it just takes iron to craft, and so in a PvP realm, it's one of those high damage, low expense type of items that okay, this is a big improvement right here. The Nika war paint are now crafted from coal instead of ash. Big improvement. Big. So this is what I'm talking about. So another thing, I did a video a while back. It's on my uh, war paints. The entire spectrum of war paints need to be reworked. Like you can craft war paints and they give you attributes. Well, NPCs drop war paints, but the problem is those war paints have no functional use. They just ultimately end up use a load on the system because it's a load on the system to store and it's a load on the system to equip, and then people have to animate them and model them, and they have no functional use. And so like the Black Galleon, they drop the Black Hand war paint that should have a unique attribute that you can't get from crafting war paint, and that would create that replayability loop. But I don't think they've done that. But I know it's a little bit of side rant and some of the things that I've been talking about in the past. But this is um, this is good. This is good. Fix an issue with some dies would not give glass flask back. Okay, I don't get into the die thing very much. The recipe for crafting table of power has been that's a good one. That's so it's basically been moved to your inventory crafting instead of using the cauldron. That's really good. Fix an issue where a Pacific Tier 3 blacksmith was missing its recipe. They've been fighting this on and off for over a year. Like whenever they patch, for some reason there's some script that causes the tiered thralls to lose their recipes. And a workaround for that is you can actually equip them and then like unequip them and then equip a different thrall and then equip them again. And I have a video somewhere where I show how to get the recipes back by like cycling the thralls through the inventories. It's crazy, but there's a way to usually get and it's funny they have the Sumerian battle axe, but the Sumerian battle axe is not really all that great of a weapon. Okay, epic armor no longer requires a basic armor as an ingredient. This is big. Um, this is a huge improvement overall. The armor no longer requires basic armor when crafting. Instead, the base cost of these armors have been increased. You no longer need to run back and forth between armor benches in order to craft. See, this is so good. This is so good right here. Fixed some inconsistencies of shield crafting. Okay, so they have the armor bench while other shields crafted in the okay. So they've basically just it's a continuation of polishing. This is really good. And you know what's funny is when you go through and you look at some of the other patch notes in the past, you're not going to see this level of polishing. You're just going to see where they're like throwing mud at the wall, and they're not actually looking. So I think the community as a whole has been kind of talking about this refinement, and I think it's starting to show. Um, okay, so this choker can now be dyed. Feel fluid presses will now correctly press skeleton or scorpion carcasses. So that, an issue was is they in this last patch they added scorpions and the ability to tame them, but they didn't update the other systems like the fluid press to handle get to where they were a part of they're actually turned into a resource like the rest of them. um so that's interesting. The another big thing that's fixed the number of issues with crafting tools for taxidermy. That's another one of those things where they came out with a system, and then the system basically wasn't updated correctly throughout the process. Okay, combat fixes. This is going to be interesting. Combat fixes fixed an issue where killing certain monsters in a dungeon would grant too much experience. Oh, I know what that one is. I know what that one is. That's the one that Firespark did the video on. Um, if you if you if you if you have a guy you want to level up, now it's time to do it because it's gonna go away. Yeah, I know what that one is. I'm not gonna say what it is, but if you're curious about power leveling, just go watch Firespark's video. Um, what is this? Um, I don't know what this is. Now correctly applies frigid bite on hit. I don't know what this is. I haven't seen this before. Okay, so this is AI enthralls. You notice how how they AI enthrall. I mean, I did a whole bunch of videos about this. I probably did 30 videos on how retarded the thralls are, and fixes. So they associate artificial intelligence and thralls in the same sentence. So thralls and NPCs in the volcano now have more hit points. So that means that okay, because one of the issues is the thralls had like 6,500 hit points where you could get the bandit leader that had like almost 75. It was like 74-25. But and so nobody was going to the volcano. They're like, I'm not going to the volcano to deal with that shit. Fixed an issue where bear thralls would deal much higher damage compared to the thralls of man. All this stuff's coming from Firestark videos. All of this stuff of the same tier. Yeah, these I knew this was going to happen. I knew when Firespark and Setham started doing these videos on the thralls and getting into the mechanics, um, that they were gonna nerf the shit out of those thralls. It says fix an issue where thralls bears would do higher damage compared to the thralls of the same tier. A Dafari dogs of the desert, a relic hunter now have wide selection of thrall types. Oh, so they redid the loot table of the Defarian. Nice. Very nice. Most named tier 4 NPCs have undergone a training. Uh-oh. So they've went through. I'm interpreting this. Bear with me. They've gone through and undergone a training regimen and now are much tougher to defeat. So that sounds like what they've done is increase their difficulty or their concussion bar. and it makes it sound like their concussion bar, like the whatever imaginary hit points they throw on there. Uh, so they're okay. So and they've nerfed the bandit leader. Holy shit! So they've made them tougher. It says the bandit leader and their companions can no longer be knocked out. Already, uh, bandit leader and their companions can no longer be knocked out. Yeah, I knew they were gonna fix all this stuff already. Problem is the YouTubers have been started doing videos uh, on which is the most powerful thrall and which is the best loot and which is and so what that does is I guess in a good way it's brought to light some of the issues, and in a bad way the good stuff immediately gets nerfed. Already thrall field bandit will not be purged from the database. Thrallified bandits. Okay, thrallified bandits. So if you already own bandits, you're good. Okay. Already thrallified bandits will not be purged from the database. Wow. So that makes it a rarity. That makes it really valuable to have your thralls. Wow. Okay. So thrall bandit leader and their companions no longer be knocked out. Well, I guess that's everybody's moving out of Sipper Maru. There's no reason to hang out that place anymore. Um, Fix an issue where thralls would not accurately teleport back to home if they're too far away. So, this brings up a valid point that I've talked about in a few videos is the menu. So, when you hold down E and there's that little circular menu that pops up and you pick, follow, stay home. They need, I'm sorry, follow, stay, and when you say follow and stay, it just puts them in scout mode. So and then if you say stand guard, that's where they're bound. They need to add another block in there that says go home, and the thrall will teleport home when you say go home. I mean, it's okay for them to add like a 20-minute delay or a 15-minute spawn relay, but they need to add more functionality in that thrall wheel where you can hey, go home, you can say move, and the thrall will just move back a few steps, or step to the side. But they need to add a little bit more polishing, and that's kind of why I'm doing this video is talk about some of the changes based off my insight of the game, and then also the continuation of what I'd like to see changed. Okay, so here the next one is fixed an issue where upon rejoining the session, thralls could remain in their original location even if supporting structures were destroyed. Okay, so it sounds like where when you see those floating thralls because the building went into decay and you right click to say delete and it deleted the building, but the thralls are still. I think they fixed that. Uh, Okay, so before the rights are those like ghost undead knights. And when you craft them in the cauldron, they're in essence a pet. And what they were doing is they were dropping their weapons. You could loot their weapons when they died, and their weapons were like non corroding or non yeah, their weapons were non. Man, the bandit leader's a shame. That's the shame. That's the bummer. That's the bummer. Uh, right pet should no longer drop. Okay. Scorpion eggs now hatch over time as intended. Um, balance. Okay, here we go. And this man, there was some good information to come out of this AI and thrall fixes. Man, I wish they would revisit the AI and see if they can polish that. They've done it once, but I wish they could polish it up a little bit more. Okay, now for balance and updates. And I'm not going to go through this with a fine tooth comb, but I am going to speak to the how it affects the overall gameplay. And so temperature rework. Temperature for me, temperature just feels like it was brutal. And even there was at one point I had survival spec'd into it, and I couldn't tell the difference. And so it looks like they've actually gone through. So each survival attribute point now adds 1.2% reduction to the number of ticks of buffs like poison. And so then what's nice is my original interpretation of this was it just was the overheating or the freezing aspect, but what they've done it to all effects: bleeding, gas, sunder, cripple, etc. So they've added this reduction, um, and this is huge. This might even be game breaking. This I wouldn't be a bit surprised if this gets polished, retweaked to 1% or 1.4. They come back and visit this because in some aspects, if a person has a good survival bleed, they can completely nulligate. But it makes survival extremely viable. It does, because you can basically 1.2% reduction per point. So if you have 10 points, you're going to have 10%, 10 point. Um, I'm sorry, bear with me. So you're going to have it's going to give you 11 points. You're going to have no 12 points. You're going to have 12 points reduction per click. This is a little. I'm kind of curious to see how this manifests, because you're saying 12 points of reduction, or 12%. This will be 12% if you put 10 points in there. Reduction, um, bleed, gas, sunder. This is going to take a lot of. Okay, so temperature debuffs cannot override or be overridden by temperature buffs. Drink water, water cooling effects instead of cooling down. So there's a lot of work they've done here. Increase the experience gain from defeating creatures in the Exiles land in order to smooth out the curve of leveling towards the end game. Yeah, that was a huge issue. Because you would level up really quickly. I did a tutorial cities where I can no bullshit get to level 30 in 3 hours. But then when you get to level 40, it becomes 20 hours of gameplay to go from like level 40 to 50. So this is increase the experience gain from defeating creatures in the exiles land in order to smooth out. See, I'm curious, because what that's going to do is that's going to level you up quicker early game, but then this is going to have to be revisited. I don't think there's one solution to fit all. They would have to create some tools, some experience tools, like a little simulator or emulator to like a little script app to polish some of these things out correctly. Attribute changes. Oh, this is so good. Okay, survival now gives a reduction to 1.2% per stat point. The number of ticks from negative effect bleeds. Okay, so it sounds like it reduces the time stat points to number of ticks from negative effects, bleeds, poison, sunder, etc. Also affects debuffs from okay. I I'm still a little confused on the implementation of this, because it sounds like it just reduces, like, so if you get hit and it takes 20 clicks, that's a little like exaggeration. But then if you reduce it by 10%, um, this might not be as effective is it kind of reads it this more the way that they've done this is so it's not damage reduct per click, it's time they've reduced on the clicks. Um, ability now grants 4 points of armor per set point instead of two. Okay, this is a good one. They need to redo the perks. Some of the perks, like that first agility perk, is not. You can put the same amount of points into grit and get the same benefit, or almost. It's that some of these perks are not. Also, the first perk from agility grants more stamina reduction from this right here is directly based off of Firespark's video. Like they watch his videos and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's trash. We need to redo that." Like that's crazy. People have been blowing up on the forums forever saying that this kind of stuff is broken, this is broken, and Firespark has a viewership of 5,000, 5,000 or 30,000 people, and they watch this video and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's broken. We should make that a priority." Forget the people on the forums. Um, Accuracy, okay. The 40th perk has been reworked, no longer grants a modifier to weapon armor penetration. Instead, it grants a flat 30% to attack. Wait. Okay, the accuracy 40th perk has been reworked. It no longer grants a modifier to weapon armor penetration. Instead, it grants a flat 30% armor penetration to attack. Generally increase its power. So there's a difference between weapon armor penetration and armor penetration. That's kind of a little confusing. Weapons armor penetration instead of it grants a flat 30% to armor. It sounds like they have a few different, like when they were making this game, early development, and they have some systems in here that are kind of obsolete, and some of these perks are still tied into the obsolete systems. Weapon balance changes. Hot fix for certain swords. Hammer and katana attacks have been increased to make it easier to hit those. Okay, let me read that again. I'm sorry. Hammer and katana attacks have been increased to make it easier to hit with those attacks. Oh, okay. Hit with a. No, I agree. That I think they even fixed that. I think they fixed that in the previous patch. They dialed down the craziness because before you had a one-handed hammer, you were just all over the place. You were like a ballerina. I mean, it was just crazy. So it looks like that's a continuing repolish of the hammer and katana. That's great. Okay, it says in addition, the stamina use system game has altered. So heavy attacks will now require more stamina than lighter attacks. I thought this was already dialed in. I thought they fixed this. Except daggers. So now daggers. This is what's relevant about this statement. Is not that light attacks do less stamina. Like that's a no-brainer. But the what's relevant is daggers. Dagger stamina has been lowered in general. So you will get more attacks with daggers, and not only that, but daggers have the bleed and poison effects now, and the hyper armor has been added to daggers. So the meta now has changed for daggers. Before spears were going to be your big PvP weapon, not no more. It's going to be daggers. You know, and that makes sense. You lose the range, but in for the trade-off, you've picked up more attacks, more damage, and more lethal HP, like bleeding effects. So your poison and your bleeds that are associated with those are this is huge. This is spears also now have less do less damage than before. Oh, how funny! I talked about the meta in the game, and then the next follow-on bullet spears also. So what they're doing is they're taking away the spear meta They're trying to rebalance it to where, and they were giving it to daggers, is what they're doing. Because the role of spears are really to fight like bosses and dragons, those really big creatures. Because I've noticed when I fight the dragons, um, with regular weapons, a lot of times the thralls can't reach the dragons. But if I give them a spear, it doesn't bug out. But if I give them daggers or swords, that the thrall bugs out. It can't get to the hitbox of the dragon, and then the unless I like pull the dragon over a plateau where the dragon's elevated, and the thrall can get more central to the core of the dragon, and then they won't bug out. But if I give him a spear, I notice that the dragon doesn't bug out. Um, so this is good. This is good, and what that also does is this can open up spears to getting other secondary effects that are more gameplay rewarding, and it defines the roles. Right now you can get spears that heal, like the one they have, versus this stuff can get poison and damage. Maybe you can get a spear that has some degree of protection, or maybe a deflection. Anyways, that's not relevant. But what is this? Truncheons, blunt arrows, and I talked about this in a video. Truncheons, blunt arrows, and javelins now also do stamina damage to players. In addition, the blunt arrows and blunt javelins have had their concussion damage increased. Oh, I did a video on this. I totally did a video. I would be happy if my video, um if one of my 30 subscribers was the Funcom team, like they probably fucking hate me. And they're like, "Yep, yep." The Yamar recipes have been, man, Yamar has, like, no one uses Yamar. It is so unused. Um it is so not relevant. And then the increased armor for heavy armor. Now this, like, it's the tiniest little insignificant bullet right here. If you look at this, increased armor for heavy armors. But what this means is your thralls. Your thralls just got a huge buff. That's what I interpret this as, because the way thralls work is your attribute stats. Like, let's say you have an armor set that gives you 100 armor and 5 vitality. Well, the thralls don't get to use vitality. They just get to use the raw armor. And same thing with the weapons. They don't get to use armor pen. They just get to use the raw damage. And so they've simplified some of the mechanics on the thralls, and the only way to get the benefit of those simplified mechanics is just through manipulating those core stats. So you forget about the vitality and the endurance. That doesn't do anything. It's just AC. And on the weapon side of it, it's just raw damage. So, like, you just put the damage kit on there, and then you just manipulate those two stats, because those are the only thing that your thrall will reflect. And so this is basically, they're saying right here, thrall buff is what they're saying. This is thrall buff. This is huge. I really like all of these balanced and updates. It's kind of sad about the bandit leader, but I really like. Okay, it says fix an issue with god bubbles. Okay, now we're under general bug fixes. Ghost axes and ghost swords now start with a corruption durability. We knew they were going to fix that. Following community feedback, players can now drink water from the pool of refreshment. Oh, see, I like this. Whenever they start off a bullet with following community feedback, that's the way that it should go. There should be more of these. Players can now drink from. I don't remember which one's the pool of refreshment. I think that's the one from the riddle of steel. Let me move back to the top. I was jumping. So we knew about the god bubble. Removed a non-functional fourth die slot from the legendary of Norad Helm. Okay. Scorpion War Shield now has the proper amount of durability. Oh, I wonder if that thing had, like, too much or too little. Um, Drode guards, assassins issue now drop the correct loot instead of whatever. Cultist Dragoon head no longer emits light from the okay. Following community feedback that there's players can now drink from the pool of refreshment. Ghost ass and ghost swords. Okay. Set. Okay. Set attribute now causes alcohol poisoning as well. Oh. Oh, that's big because the set attribute used to be what cured alcohol poisoning. And what people would do is they would go through all their buffs and then they would drink their antidote and then clear the alcohol poisoning, and then they had like 40 stacks of strength, endurance, stamina, 100% increased hit points. Like it was, they just were able to manipulate all these stats. And so what they've done here is they this by this little bullet they've impacted the player versus player um, stat manipulation. That's what that means. Because you type in food buffs and yeah, they because the stuff that gives you really good buffs is gives you the alcohol poisoning. So now cures alcohol poisoning as well. I thought it already did. Okay, I got a little off track there. Feast of Jagahar Sag now available through the admin panel as well. Oh, I guess it was hidden before. Fixed a number of issues, wearing, unwearing, black feather helmet. Okay. Corpus Corpus shield is now the correct stats. Equip and unequipped horn of the north no longer unlocks God of the North achievement. Fixed an issue where the Night Stalker mask and Night Eye potion effect together would combine into blinding light. That's interesting. And a myriad of other quality of life fixes, text fixes. Okay. Some of these are actually to be honest, I don't even know that they kind of fall under the balance update instead of bug fixes. But this is good. Uh, what is this? This is equipment fixes. See, I normally don't rig fixes, but now that I'm kind of realizing, um, terrain and environment fixes fix the number of exploitable places where dungeon bosses could be harmed without risk of uh, cheesing. That's the term I use. Fixed a number of corrupted textures. Okay, that's good. Low res textures. That's important. Some of this stuff has been reduced. Light bleed from. Okay, reduced the light bleed from fractions on a wet surface. Oh, okay. This is all I guess reflections. Okay, light bleed. For some reason I was thinking like dagger bleed, like a light, heavy bleeding and light bleeding, but I get it. It's more of a visual. Fixed a number of okay. A copy of the okay, no longer. So none of that stuff's not very UI and text fixes. Okay. So a lot of this audio fixes and then community tools. So for the most part, that is I think that's a really big update. So um I really like the direction. Most of the stuff I talked about was really, really polishing. I mean, I didn't even get into what's available in the dungeon. I talked about how the some of these small little bullets have large impact. So, anyways, I hope you like this kind of content. Um, I know it's a little different from what I normally do. Give me some feedback on what you think, and always like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.